Welcome back to the Agent Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Caffarella. The Agent Investor brand, the Agent Investor Podcast helps real estate agents get off the real estate roller coaster by teaching them how to combine investing and being a real estate agent so that you can earn passive income, so that you can earn big chunks of income by fixing and flipping properties that you come across in your everyday life. If you haven't learned yet about our agent partnership program, where we put up all the money, do all the construction, and then split the profits with agents 50-50, please make sure to check out my on-demand webinar at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. On the webinar, we're going to teach you how to find deals to fix and flip. We're going to teach you about what our agent partnership program is. We're even going to teach you how you can get upfront money just for finding us a deal before the property is actually flipped. Again, check it out at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. The average fix and flip deal that we split with agents is $80,000. Of course, there's a lot of variation within that, but we have done deals that range anywhere from a profit of 20, 30 grand all the way up to $200,000 plus. Again, learn more at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. All right, today I'm going to be talking about a topic that's super important, which are mistakes. I'm going to talk about my biggest 8 mistakes that I've made in my real estate career so that you don't have to repeat them. When we are talking about being an agent investor, when we're talking about being self-employed, when we're talking about being an entrepreneur, the most important thing that we do each and every day is we determine how we're going to spend our time. We all have the same number of hours in a day. How we spend our time is going to dictate and determine what our net worth is, what our results are, whether we're going to accomplish our goals and our dreams or not. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today, the 8 biggest mistakes that I've made in my career, are kind of going to, show you how I spent my time and how I did things in an inefficient way, or maybe not the most optimal way. And certainly you can still achieve, you can achieve massive results even when making mistakes. This podcast episode is not about preventing mistakes. You can't always prevent and avoid every mistake, but it's about how to spend your time wisely. All right, so I'm going to jump right into it. The first mistake that I'm going to talk about, number one mistake that I've made in my real estate career, is actually thinking too big and not focusing enough on the nitty-gritty small day-to-day details. Almost sounds counterintuitive because when you listen to a podcast, when you go to an event and you get pumped up and you listen to somebody like Grant Cardone who tells you to 10x, think 10 times bigger. It might sound counterintuitive to the thinking big can actually be problematic. Now, just to be very clear, when I say that thinking too big can be an issue, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have big long-term goals. You absolutely should. You should have big long-term goals that you hit over, say, a 5 or 10 or a 15-year period. The problem with what I see with 10xing it, or the mindset in general, and the problems that I've had in my business are that in a lot of cases, in order to 10x what you currently have, it takes time. It takes years. It doesn't happen in 90 days. It doesn't happen in 6 months. It doesn't happen in a year or two. And what can happen, and the mistakes that I've made in my business that I hope that you don't repeat, are that you don't make a long-term plan and you try to get those big results really quick, and you're not really doing the blocking and tackling in your business that you need to do. The nitty-gritty stuff, the stuff that you know that you need to do every day. In fact, when I talk to most agent investors who are dreaming big and starting out small, a lot of times the work that you need to do in the very beginning of your business is really basic. It can be boring. It's not big, it's small. Um, but when it comes to getting big results and when you talk about 10xing your business, it is not the success does not happen in a straight line. It actually happens exponentially. So if you look up, if you don't know what an exponential curve is, take a look at it, Google it. Um, how success typically works when you're thinking big is that you make like really small progress in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of momentum and you go sky high. The problem with thinking big and kind of the mindset theories that I see, spouted out there is that a lot of people get the time frame confused and they think that they're going to get the 10x results in a year or 6 months or 2 years when it's really, and I wish it wasn't this way, but it's more like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So you've got to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, you are doing the blocking and tackling, you are doing the basics, and you are doing the stuff that is super important to do each and every day. All right. Number 2 mistake that I made at some point in my business. And I'll be honest, I made this mistake for a while, which is to not track and have metrics for my business on a weekly basis. Now, I started my business in 2005, so it's been over 10 years now that I've been in real estate. Got my real estate license in the summer of 2005, and I did not have weekly metrics, I would say, until probably about 2020, 2021. Kind of embarrassing to say that I spent the first 15 years of being in business without looking at my numbers weekly. And what happens when you don't have numbers that you look at weekly is you don't really know whether you're on track to actually hit your long-term goals. Now, to get back to point number 1, I'm not saying don't dream big, but you've got to have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan, and then that needs to break down into weekly numbers that you need to hit every single week, right? So I'll give you just one simple example for my company. In order for my company to fix and flip the houses that we want to flip in a year, we need to have 100 plus seller appointments, face-to-face seller appointments, from the marketing that we do, the network that we have, and the agent referral leads that we have coming in. And each and every week I look and I say, did we hit the 100 appointment mark? And if we did, great, we're probably on track. If we didn't, then I need to look and say, why? Why didn't we hit this weekly number? And when you look at your numbers that you know that you need to hit on a weekly basis, week over week, and you're hitting them, you're like, okay, great. Like for this quarter, for the next 90 days, it looks like we're on track to hit our quarterly goal. If we hit all 4 quarters, we're going to hit our yearly goal. If we keep hitting and piling up year over year goals, we're going to end up hitting our long-term goal. It sounds really simple, but I know for a fact, because I am a real estate broker, I have over 400 agents in my brokerage. I know that it is very common that agents don't look at their numbers on a weekly basis, right? And some people will say, well, yeah, well, who am I going to review my numbers with? Well, it could just be you. I mean, I'm speaking for myself where I'm at in my business today. We have a meeting with 4 people in my company every Tuesday at 6:30 a.m. and we review the numbers. That's one thing that we do in that meeting. Okay, so you've got to do that. All right, number 3 mistake that I've made in my business, and I try as best I can to avoid doing this right now, but it is something that a lot of people do, and I definitely did it, which is mistake number 3 that I've made in my business, which is trying to do too many things. Okay. And I don't even have time to kind of list out all of the things that I've tried to do, all of the different silos of my business that I've tried to build. And when you have some level of success, when you are confident, when you are hardworking, sometimes you can get into a position where you almost get overconfident. Like, hey, I can probably do anything. I can juggle There's no amount of balls in the air that I can't juggle. And I'll give you kind of like my best example in my business where I failed, fell flat on my face, did not have any success in it. And it hurt me because, to go back to a point I made in the very beginning, all we have is time. How we spend our time is going to dictate our long term result. Our long term result is how we want our life to change. Like many of us who are listening to this, you might be happy with your life. I mean, I'm happy with my life, but I know over the course of time that I want my life to get better. I want my life to improve. I want my life to get easier. I want my net worth to grow. I want the life of my kids to get better, right? So another thing, number three, the trying to do too many things. My example that I'd like to share is, yes, I have a brokerage with 400 agents in it. And I thought, well, I'm seeing all of these other brokerages and teams build buyer teams where they're buying, Zillow or Trulia or Redfin leads, handing them to their agents and having a little profit center. I don't want to delve too deep into this, but I just want to give you the example. Like that's not something I was ever good at. Like I never really worked buyer leads too much myself. I don't really know too much about them. But yeah, I had the ability to have a budget for it. I actually hired somebody within my company to manage my buyer team. At one point, I had 20 agents taking buyer leads in my company. And you know what the results were? The results were that I probably lost $100,000 between leads and staff. And nobody really made a bunch of money on my buyer team. Yeah, we'd have some closings here and there. But the reality was, because I wasn't involved, because I was thinking too big, let me outsource everything. Let me scale. Let me just do something that I've never done before. Let me dump some money into it. And of course it'll work out. Well, it didn't work out for anybody. It didn't work out for the agents in my company who were taking my leads. It didn't work out for me. It didn't work for my buyer team manager. And I could kind of go on and on. But it is very important, and I'm sure you've heard the proverb, if you chase two rabbits, you'll catch none. I have found that to be true. And it is very easy to think in your head, like, I can do a lot of different things. And I remember, actually, I was at a conference 4 or 5 years ago, and I got a really, really good piece of advice. The piece of advice came from the CEO of Priceline.com. He was the keynote speaker, and he said something to our group, to the group of people that were there, that stood with me and that I'm trying to implement into my business every day. He said, you need to figure out in your own industry what you can win a gold medal at, meaning what you can be one of one at. And for us and my company and me, that's Agent Investor. That's what you guys are listening to right now. That is the one thing that there is nobody else. I'm confident of this. There is nobody else in the nation that can help agents invest in real estate better than I can. They can mentor them. They can provide them with educational opportunities. I am one of one. I'm not saying that some other people can't do a good job at it, but I know that I can win a gold medal at that. So trying to do too many things, a lot of times you end up not being good at anything. And the buyer team for me, and I could give more examples of this, ended up just being a distraction. All right, number four mistake that I made that cost me time, cost me money, cost me frustration, cost me anxiety, was waiting too long to get in. So some of you know my story. Yes, I got licensed in 2005. Yes, I was selling real estate since 2005, but I didn't do my first real estate investing deal until 2009. Well, why was that? Well, there was a lot of reasons. I think the key ones were I didn't have a mentor. I wasn't surrounded by people that also invested in real estate. I was scared. I didn't think I was ready. I didn't know the path. But in hindsight, all of the excuses that I just named, weren't really great reasons. And I spent a lot of time telling myself that I was going to invest one day, and it took me 4 whole years to do it. Now, I was lucky. I was fortunate because those 4 years were between I was 24 years old to 28 years old. Okay, so I was still relatively young. Been investing in real estate now for, whatever it is, 15, 16 years. Okay, so that's good. But I could have started earlier. And for most people, the number one thing that I see for people that don't start is they actually don't really get educated. And to me, the easiest way to start investing in real estate is to partner with us. And most agents, when I talk to them about our partnership program, the ones who don't follow through or don't do a deal with us, most of them don't think they have the time or they're not ready. If you think that, if you're like, well, I haven't seen a deal, I don't know how to find a deal, I'm not ready, I need more time, go to www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com and I will teach you guys how you can find fix and flip deals so you can start investing today. Most agents make the mistake that they think that it's really hard to find these deals or it takes a lot of time. And while deals definitely don't grow on trees, there are a lot of times throughout the year where agents actually stumble across deals, but they don't recognize them as opportunities because they're not really looking. They're not actively thinking about it. And again, if you're in that mindset where you're like, I don't know if I could do a deal, I don't know if I have enough time, I don't know where I would find one, make sure to go to my on-demand webinar at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. All right, we're halfway there. Number 5, mistake that I've made in my real estate career: not having clearly defined goals. Not having clearly defined goals. Just going into every day and trying to put in effort and not really knowing what I'm trying to do, other than I want to do more retail residential transactions. I want to do more flips. I want to hold more properties. I want to raise more capital. So if you were to ask me, from the years of 2005 to probably 2020, for 15 years, if you were to ask me what my goal was, once a month, I probably would have said different things. So it goes without saying, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here in terms of you understanding. But if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And you need to have clearly defined written goals. Okay. Very important. All right. Number 6. Number 6 mistake that I made early on. Don't do it anymore. All of these mistakes I've learned from, and I'm sure, to be clear, I will make more mistakes. I will absolutely make more mistakes. Making mistakes is unavoidable, but this mistake is a mistake I don't make anymore. And number 6 mistake is not being efficient with my time and making up for it by overworking. So again, first probably 15 years of me being in business, I always had the mindset that you just work and work and work and work. Nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And in fact, in a lot of cases, to get ahead, you do need to put in extra hours. Okay. Not all of us have extra hours, but if you do, that's a blessing and that's something that you can use to grow your business. But I will say, for me, it was kind of my crutch. It was my excuse almost not to plan out my time, not to be efficient, not to make sure I was spending my time the right way. Now, what changed for me was in 2013, I started having kids and I started saying, geez, I need to make a decision. Am I going to continue to work all those crazy hours, or am I going to try to figure out a way to get the same results in less time? What I realized as I started to do that was I was doing a lot of things, tasks, hours that weren't really getting me great results. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Pareto's principle, which is the principle that 20% of all your efforts get you 80% of your results. Meaning that, like, if you tracked your hours every week and you look back and you said, highlight the things that really gave me the monetary results in my business, you'd only be highlighting like 20% of what you're doing. So the process of actually doing that, writing down, if you haven't done this yet as an exercise, write down how you're spending your time for the next couple weeks and analyze it. And ask yourself an honest question about every hour that you spent. Is this hour that I spent a good use of my time? Is this producing results, or am I doing busy work? One simple example that I see all the time, and I highly recommend, is that I see most agents doing their own transaction coordination work on their deals. There's no reason to do that, right? Now, some people will say, well, it costs money. Well, in our contracts, if I have a listing, if I have a buyer agreement, I'm putting that transaction coordination fee in there because I believe that it's actually going to give the buyer or the seller of the property I work with a better product. So if it doesn't cost you anything and it's actually giving your buyer and your seller a better product, and it's going to save you 5 to 10 hours on every listing or buyer that you work with, that's just an example. Like, every hour that you spend, ideally, is an hour that you're spending that's going to drive big results. What are big results for agent investors? What are activities? I mean, to me, the number one activity that an agent can do if they're an agent investor is to generate seller appointments. That should be the number one thing, whether you're doing it via social media or marketing or networking or whatever. We talk about those strategies all the time. I talk about those strategies on my on-demand webinar at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. But to me, that's the number one use of time. If you're spending less than 5 hours a week trying to generate a seller appointment, it's going to be tough for you to hit your long-term goals. Because if you're following the agent investor model, which is step one, keep selling real estate, but focus a little bit more on sellers. Use the seller opportunities that make sense to flip, to either flip on your own or partner with us and generate big chunks of income. For step number 3, invest those big chunks of income like you never had them, like it's found money, and invest them into long-term passive assets. If you do just that, if you're being efficient with your time, if you're spending your time generating seller appointments and doing less of the nitty-gritty administrative type work, you're going to make a lot of money. Your net worth is going to grow. All right, number 7, not creating and projecting a profit and loss. Something I didn't do until I had a CFO. Hired a CFO in 2020. Starting actually with a fractional CFO, only doing, 10, 15 hours a week. Now he's full-time. And we review a budget, an expense budget. We review a projected P&L. It ties into all of our weekly goals, all of our weekly metrics. And we make sure that anytime that we're spending money, that there's a return there, right? We had some really good years in the beginning of our business, which led us to be a little bit undisciplined with the way that we were spending money. We were wasting money. We were putting money into things that we thought were giving us a return that really wasn't. And it's because we did not have a profit and loss, a budget. I shouldn't say we didn't have a profit and loss. We didn't have a projected profit and loss. Like we didn't have a revenue budget. We didn't have an expense budget. And again, we kind of going back to, my 6th point, my one before this is like, we covered up a lot of mistakes by just overworking and saying, okay, we'll put in more hours. We'll drive up our revenue that way. But you've got to have a projected revenue, projected P&L. All right, mistake number 8. That is not always easy to understand or easy to avoid. But number 8 for me was listening to the wrong people. And listening to the wrong people, it was different people at different points in my life. Okay. So there's a saying that I say all the time: you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. When I was first starting my own company, some of my closest friends said I would never make it. I would never, be able to run a business, never be able to be successful. And it's funny, those were my friends. Those were people that actually cared about me. They actually thought that was helping me. They thought that, well, I went to college, I was a good student, I had a good job out of college. Well, why not keep doing that? Right. So listening to the wrong people at that point would have been a huge detriment for me. Luckily, I didn't listen to those people. But as time went on, there were different people that I listened to that were wrong. Okay. So I had mentors and coaches that I listened to. And what I've learned over the course of time, whether you read a book, whether you're listening to my podcast, whether you hire a coach or a mentor or whatever, you want to listen to people. And I say listen to everybody. Listen to your mom, listen to your dad, listen to your siblings, listen to your coworkers, listen to your friends, listen to your coaches. Because anybody could have a great idea, but anybody also could have a bad idea. And really, before you take action on anything that anybody says, what I would highly recommend doing is really filtering it through yourself. I know that that is a simple comment, but what I did, the mistake I made in a lot of cases was, okay, I hire a coach. I ask the coach for advice. I assume that they're 100% right all the time. And I just do what they tell me to do, even though maybe they didn't have a full understanding of my business or my goals. So I am not suggesting in any way that you ignore your coaches, ignore your mentors, don't listen to advice. But be careful about who you listen to. Make sure you're listening to people who already have done what you want to do, and make sure that it works for you. Whatever they're suggesting to do, whatever tactics or strategies or positive comments or negative comments, filter them through yourself, because only you know your real goals. Only you know whether something will work for you. So that's it. Those are my 8 biggest mistakes. They were big ones. They cost me time, effort, money, whatever. Again, I'll say it over and over again. You're not going to be able to avoid every mistake, but the more mistakes you can avoid, the more time you can prevent from wasting, the faster you're going to go, the further you're going to go. And again, why are we all doing this? We're doing this to improve our lives, point blank. Like, we can say it's about money. We can say it's about, whatever, but it's all about improving lives of our family. And that's what we aim to do. So again, my biggest piece of advice that I can give right now is, like, if what I'm saying resonates with you, make sure to listen to my on-demand webinar at www.partnerwithagentinvestor.com. And also check out whether or not we have a free upcoming event that you can attend. You can check those out at www.agentinvestorevent.com. I wish you guys all, a great rest of the week.